Okay,
Can
okay,
put my headphones on. I think the sound might not be as good as it could be.
okay. So hello,
Can you
we
speak
are
now?
live now. We are live. So no issues, Jack.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
go ahead with your tea and coffee. It normally happens. No issues with that. So welcome all to Front Foot, a very special episode. And today we have got Mr. Jack Hope from the Cricket Podcast. And it is going to be a very good show. Today we'll be discussing, of course, about his podcast life and journey. What does he do? And of course, about the India versus England cricket. So welcome, Jack. And how are you? Everything fine? COVID situation in your country all okay? And how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, things are getting a lot better here. I played 3 cricket matches over the weekend, so we're kind of out and about and getting back to normal life as much as we can be. We've still got masks and people still being careful. Still had, thousands of cases, so it's not over yet. But I think from the point of view of the UK, things are on the right track. So happy from that front. And personally, I'm doing well. Really looking forward to the India series. Only got 20 this weekend, which is a bit disappointing, but that's cricket.
Exactly. Okay, Jack. First, tell our Indian viewers about yourself. I mean, what do you originally do? Are you only a podcaster? Do you give some commentary also? Tell us about yourself and your lives, about your journey. How did you fall in love with cricket? I mean, do you cover other sports? So give us a brief description about yourself. And of course, I will be sharing the link of your podcast in our description so that people can go and hear it because it is absolutely very good, especially when I hear that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jack. I'm on the Cricket Podcast. Cricket Podcast is 3 of us. It's me, there's Ross, there's Max, and we do a weekly cricket podcast on whatever the big cricket of the time is. So we were doing the IPL recently. We did the World Test Championship. We've been talking a lot about the 100 recently. That's obviously changed the game in England.
Exactly.
And we'll be going on to talk a lot about India v England. We'll be doing daily shows after a lot of the day's play, so that's all good. I have, we've been doing the podcast for 2 and a bit years now. So it started in 2019, just before the World Cup. Don't cover any other sports, just cricket. And we do it because of the passion for the game, basically.
Absolutely.
We're all big fans. We play together. We spend time talking about cricket, and so we thought, why don't we record this and see what happens? And after doing it for 2 years, we got better. And eventually, it got to the point where people were happy to spend an hour listening to what we had to say. And it's been really cool. We met some really great people along the way. We've had chats with David Gower, Jack Russell, Dan Norcross, who'll be on our India preview today, actually. And I spoke with Jared Kimber last week.
Yeah.
So it's been a really fun journey. And then before that, I've been playing cricket since I was 5 years old. I played a lot with my granddad in his back garden. He was a very good player. He played with Dennis Compton way back in the day in London. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And the Cricket Podcast. Obviously, you can find us at the Cricket Pod. I think that's in my StreamYard bio or name tag at the bottom, at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Join us for the India England series.
Of course, you guys need to join Jack because they are very good and they give great analysis about the India versus England game. Of course, now we are going to talk something about the England cricket. I mean, they are doing very well, especially in the white balls. And currently, we saw a second string, you can say, all from the counties defeated Pakistan. They had a great series both in one days and in T20s. Now the first question that comes to my mind is it purely because of the high structure of county, especially your county cricket is very strong? Is that the reason why you are able to produce these kind of players?
That's a really good question. So I think there's probably a bit more to it than that. The way the county season is structured, it does at the moment give precedence to white ball cricket. So when it's warmest, when the pitches are best, England, in the county system, they're playing a lot of T20 and a lot of 50 over cricket. So that's obviously beneficial. But then, beyond that, there are some, I guess you'd call them structural things that really help England. But they've got a very good analytics department when it comes to white ball cricket. They have a very clear game plan when it comes to white ball cricket. And if you look at the Pakistan side that lost to the England C team recently, talent-wise, the Pakistan team are probably as good, if not better. But the style of cricket they played is a bit 2008, and that meant that the England C team were able to blow them away basically because they're playing just a slightly more modern brand of cricket, a slightly more data-driven brand of cricket, and that's pretty fearsome. There's also been, if you look at the detail of how county cricket has developed on that point specifically. For a few years, in around 2010, I think they cut the number of overs in the domestic 50 over tournament from 50 down to 40. Yeah. And what happened when that happened was the scoring rates went up. I mean, obviously you got fewer overs, you don't have to preserve your wicket for as long, and that meant the county long form white ball cricket that got a lot more explosive. A few years after that, I think after the 2015 World Cup, when England were embarrassed, they shifted back to 50 over cricket, but the scoring rates, they didn't go back down to the level they were at. Basically, what had happened across county cricket is that teams had learned how to be aggressive by playing in 40 over cricket, and they just carried on playing in that way. And that's, the reason, or a big part of the reason, I think, that you see, particularly on the batting side of the game, 40 players basically that could play for an international side in the English domestic pool.
Okay, Jack. Now, one question that comes to my mind is that there is always scope for improvement for the teams which are champions. I mean, who want to dominate in world cricket, there is always scope for improvement. One question that comes to my mind is that yes, England have played very well in the test matches. In the one days and in the T20s. What is the reason that they are unable to perform well in the test matches? Because in the recent past, we are seeing that England is not doing that great when it comes to the red ball cricket. So what's the reason? Is it purely because more focus in these T20s and one days? And do you think 100 is going to affect test cricket? I mean, yes, we have done an episode on 100. We like it. But do you think this might it is a bit risky when it comes to test matches? Quality of the game decreases. What do you have to say about it?
So that's quite an interesting one. I think I would speculate, and I actually don't watch that much county cricket. I mean, with all the international cricket going on in the world, with the IPL, with there are a lot more demands on my time than sitting down and watching a stream of county cricket. But from what I do know, the time of year they play it, the type of bowler you face, and the ball they use mean that the 4-day game in England has actually diverged away from test cricket and some of the skills that I think are kind of useful in that arena. In that you have, well, I mean, like every county team will have a bunch of guys bowling 80 mile an hour, nibbling the ball around because it's the Duke's ball on surfaces that are very green and very wet. And that basically doesn't give batters much of a chance to develop in terms of building innings or whatever. So if you look at the two profiles that have really come through strongly in English cricket as a result of this in batting terms, you have the guys who defend for their lives. So Dom Sibley, Rory Burns, really great examples of that. I think Haseeb Hamid's another one. They've got a pretty strong, fundamentally good defensive technique. They're quite hard to get out because and what they do is they grind, and their method basically is that if I spend an entire day at the crease, I will end with 80 runs. They might not be pretty, there might be a few in there. There's going to be a lot of leg side shots, but I will end with 80 runs. And then the other side of that are players, probably a little bit more like Johnny Bairstow, Josh Butler. I mean, Bairstow's moved quite a long way. His red ball game's changed significantly, but the way he played 3 years ago, very aggressive. And the thinking there is that it's so difficult to bat in England that you are definitely going to get out in if you're there for 100 balls. So you might as well try and score 60 runs. If you're there for 100 balls, you want to have a really high strike rate, and you want to be able to change the game while you're at the crease. Now, in England, those two approaches, you can get away with that, I think. You saw like the whole of last summer, England were undefeated. What did they win? 5? They lost to the West Indies, and they won 4 tests, and then they drew the final test. New Zealand came here; they're the best team in the world, and there were some players missing, and they beat quite a poor England team. But I think the best England team at home, batting in one of those two ways, is still quite effective. The problem really is when you go away from home, because those two styles of batting, they're not particularly well rounded. They're not, when you think about test batting, what you think about is a player who comes to the crease, establishes themselves, maybe scores 10 off their first 40 balls, then they up their strike rate, they start finding the boundaries, they start finding the gaps, rotating the strike, and score at 3.5 and over. There aren't really any England batters, apart from maybe Joe Root, that are very comfortable doing that. And Stokes, to be fair, but he's not going to be around for the summer. So it's in the England team, you've kind of got Joe Root who bats that way. Everyone else is a blocker or somebody who wants to score at 4.5 runs and over. And that doesn't create a very flexible side. Now, I don't know, to be honest, how much of that is due to county cricket, how much of that is due to coaching, how much of that is due to players wanting to collect big white ball paydays. But it clearly has created a little bit of a problem from the batting point of view. I think the other thing that people don't talk about probably enough as well is that it's not just England who are suffering with their batting. I mean, it's exacerbated for England because they have to bat in the hardest place in the world to bat. The pitches in England are very juicy. The ball swings more. The ball they use in general, the Duke's ball, it's a massive advantage for Anderson and Broad, but that means that all the batters have to face it as well. Then you've got like sort of external factors, and we don't have to get into these in loads of detail, but in general, bowlers have increased their ability to execute variations and to bowl different deliveries because of white ball cricket. You've seen the increase in things like the wobble seam. You've seen better selection in terms of rotating through seamers and picking players for conditions. I mean, like look at Australia when they came in 2019. Was Peter Siddle one of their best bowlers? No, he's not in their best four possible bowlers at all. Nobody would say that. But over a 5-match series played in 7 weeks, he is going to be better than an unfit Mitchell Starc in some of those matches. So there's a few other things that have depressed batting worldwide. Then you've got the county cricket issue and the game being quite different. And then you've got, a little bit of a lack of dynamic talent from an England point of view. So there are a few factors at play there at the moment.
Okay. Again, one question about the bio bubble. Do you really think bio bubble is successful currently in world cricket? And what is it? What is the rotation policy that is going on in the England camp? I mean, do you think these two things are successful? Don't you think it is hampering the players a lot, both mentally and physically, and especially mentally, you can say? Don't you think it is affecting them, especially these bio bubbles, these rotation policies, and these? There is lot of, you can say, there is lot of boundaries for a player. I mean, they are like suffocated. So my question, the basic question is, of course, you are going to tell about it. Do you think the talk of the town, Ben Stokes not playing, can this be a reason also? Too much of outside conditions, you can say, too much of pressure from these things like rotation or bio bubble. So what do you have to say about it?
So if we break that down, I think the rotation policy from an England point of view, they had to do that because England are playing too much cricket in 12 months. And then if you throw in the IPL, which a lot of the England players play in, you'd be talking, 10 months of the year in bio bubbles, which, most of us have experienced lockdown in one form or another. That's quite mentally distressing. It's basically being in prison. That's the same thing that the cricketers are going through, except with more regulations and people watching them. I mean, to give you an example of how extreme the bio bubbles are, when you stay in your hotel, you have to stay in your room. When you come down to breakfast, you aren't allowed to sit at a table with your teammates and have breakfast. You have to sit at your own table to minimize the risk of infection spreading. So it's an incredibly isolating thing to go through from the point of view not being able to see your friends and family. But then even with your teammates, there are further regulations to stop you spending time with your teammates. That is not an environment that you can keep people in for an extended period of time. Now, when we talk about rotation, we're not talking about the kind of rotation that I was talking about with Siddle and Stark here. We're talking about players missing, entire series or big chunks of series. And that, unfortunately, is the only way to execute this because of, things like quarantine periods and, enforced periods of time in isolation. If you're going to step back and go and see your family, you need to not be playing cricket for, at least a month for that time to be worth it. So they had to do that. I think, beyond that, we've talked a little bit about bubbles. To address the Ben Stokes thing, specifically, I think there's probably more going on there as well in terms of his father passing away recently. And he didn't have, it's as lots of people will have lost people in the last 12 months, 18 months. And the grieving process, the saying goodbye process has been, quite significantly disrupted. It won't have been, if you're a cricketer on the road, you won't have been able to spend the time with your family, with his mum, with his siblings, with his wife, with his kids, that he might wanted to have spent at what's obviously going to be quite a distressing time. I think the main thing to sort of bear in mind here is that it's a completely acceptable thing to want to do. I mean, it's a shame, for you and I, that we don't get to see Ben Stokes bowl to Virat Kohli. But
of course, yeah.
But on the list of priorities for the person that matters most here, Ben Stokes, that, what we think and what we want shouldn't really enter into it. He needs to make sure that he's as well, he's as healthy as possible. And fortunately, we're living in a world where people are realizing that what he's doing is a good thing, and that we should start treating issues like this when people want to step away from the game because of the pressure. We should start treating that more like a hamstring injury and less like a significant problem. I mean, probably what will happen is Ben Stokes will take 6 weeks off. He'll have the summer at home with his kids, with his wife, and come back for the T20 World Cup. I mean, I'd be surprised if he wasn't there for that. But I think it's completely reasonable that he'd want more time off. I mean, there's some other things going on in English cricket as well. Around the possibility of the players having to go to the Ashes without their family.
Exactly.
That's stressful. And when you're put in that environment, and even when you have to have those conversations with people about, the possibility of spending 4 months on the other side of the world without without any of your friends, without any of your family, when you're even put into that situation, that's stressful, because then you have to, in your mind, it's the most obvious thing in the world that you should be able to spend time with your family, with your children. But somebody is telling you that you're not going to be able to do that, and then you're going. Then the course of action you have to take is to go and argue that you should be able to spend time with your family. I mean, it's a ridiculous scenario to be put in, and of course that's going to have implications. I think on top of that as well, specifically with Ben Stokes, I don't think his finger healed properly. I think there's some more time required there. So you've got added injury issues. I think England have actually done reasonably well in terms of rotating their team around. I mean, have they been able to consistently put out the A squad? No, they haven't. But then if you look within the series that they have played, you'd have seen rotation anyway. I mean, like what team in the world plays their best 11 every single match these days? I mean, Australia tried it, didn't they, against India down under this year, and they lost.
Yeah.
So it's not even it's not even a guarantee of success. I think if you look at England's recent results, they've smashed it in the white ball cricket, India beat them in the white ball cricket away in India, but they played really well there.
Of course.
They won a test in India, which is more than anyone really thought they would do. I mean, they capitulated in the second half of that tour, but they still won a test. Then they lost to New Zealand at home. A fired up New Zealand preparing for the World Test Championship, a team probably at the apex of its lifespan. Williamson in best form of his life. Ross Taylor coming back into form, and then Kyle Jamieson, Neil Wagner, Tim Southey, like a phenomenal side. There's not really any shame in losing to. The only people who thought that was a poor result are people who haven't been staying up till 4 a.m. watching New Zealand.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they're a very good team.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that's sort of what I think on that. Yeah.
Okay, Jack. Now I will be putting you in a very tough situation. I will be asking you to make predictions. And the predictions for two things, that is for the India versus England series, what kind of pitches we are going to get, what kind of weather, are we going to get some grassy, juicy wickets? And my second question about the World T20. Who do you think currently are the favorites? Because for me, I guess India or England are only team in the international cricket who can play two strings, one in any format. They have got that depth and potential. So these two questions, prediction for India versus England, the weather. I guess you guys are going to cover the Nottingham Test also. Very close.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Well, predicting the weather in Britain is notoriously difficult. I would speculate based on the summer so far, and I don't even know if this is how you do weather reporting, to be honest. I would speculate that it's probably going to be wet. It's probably going to be humid. It's probably not going to be glorious sun. I think it will be, but at the same time, it's going to be kind of wet and humid. But I think what I'm saying here is there's going to be quite good conditions for bowling swing. It's not going to be so hot that the ball doesn't swing.
For India, good conditions is sun. For you, good conditions is swinging.
Yeah, so I think that'll be the case. In terms of the pitches, I think that's an interesting question. If the ball's swinging, to some extent, I don't think they really need to do that much for the pitches. And I think it will swing. I don't think there's any massive appetite to roll out a bunch of green teamers. I mean, there are a couple of grounds in England where that's just, what it's like. Lords that's what it's like. It's not. If the pitch hasn't been doctored, it has a slope. It's just a unique cricket ground. So the other venues, I think, though, are generally speaking, quite flat, possibly with the exception of Old Trafford, which tends to spin a bit more and is a little bit atypical from an English point of view. What will happen in the series, I think, will depend on how the India top three handle the moving ball. If they're able to consistently, get India 30 overs into the innings without being 2 wickets down, I think India will win the series. If they don't, I think India will lose the series, and I think it's probably as simple as that. So
it can be 3-2 in anyone's favor.
Well, I mean, it's actually quite a wide open series. I think India probably overall have the better side. I think they've got a few,
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Do you think Rahane and Pujara, do you think it will be a very crucial series for them? Because you just stated that India's top 3 or top 4 need to bat well.
They absolutely need to bat well. But what I'm thinking here is, if you line the two sides up against each other, where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses? And I think you'd probably say, that England's seam bowling is better than India's seam bowling, but not by an awful lot. Ishant Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah, whoever else they pick, are going to be good bowling options, and they've all been to England before. Bumrah and Sharma have been to England before. They'll know the conditions. They'll have a good idea of how to bowl. They've been here for a long time. They've played the World Test Championship final. They've played a few inter-squad matches. They played the county select, so they'll have, unusually for a modern tour, they'll actually be quite well prepared. They'll have had a lot of time in England getting used to the conditions. So I think that difference might be slightly more marginal. If you look at the England top three v the India top three, on paper, the Indian top three is a lot better. I mean, we don't actually even know who's going to bat three for England. I mean, we think it might be Zach Crawley still, and Ben Stokes being dropped probably makes that more likely. But he's averaged 9 since last summer. It's not fantastic. Where I think England can do damage is if they take early wickets and they expose Kohli and they expose whoever bats number 5 for India, and they expose Rishabh Pant while the ball's still moving, and it will move until it's sort of 50 overs old. If they bowl, that's the great thing about Duke. Yeah. If they get to bowl extended spells at those players, I expect they'll probably get them out, and I think India might get some low scores. Where England's relative strength lies in batting is that everybody in the England team can bat. There's not a significant drop off after like number 7 in the same way that there is for India, and that means that India could have England 30 for 3. But then there's, 2 more specialist batters. Then there's Josh Buttler. Then there's Sam Curran. Then there's, Chris Wokes or Ollie Robinson. And like there's a. I mean, even Mark Wood hit 45 a couple of tests ago against New Zealand. So a lot of these guys can bat in the same in the way that India can't. So that's why I've kind of identified the top 3 for India as being the crucial difference here is if they can stand up and make it difficult for England to get to the Indian middle order early in an innings, then I do think that that India will struggle. I expect though that might be quite difficult. I mean, I think it's a shame for India that Shubman Gill's gone home. I think he'd actually play quite well in England. And what about the World T20? My prediction for the series, I don't think I got to that. I think India will win 3-1. Okay. But I do think there's quite a slip that there's maybe a 20% chance of that happening and a 10% chance of it being 2-1 India, and then a 15% chance of it being 2-1 England. So I think there's a lot of results that are up for grabs, but I think India are a bit stronger, and I think over 5 matches, probably they'll find the way to beat England. World T20. I mean, England and India are obviously the best 2 teams in the world when it comes to T20. I think, but. I'm not so worried about the pitches. I think that for both of them, the way they lose is by picking the wrong team, and I think both of them have got the capacity, to pick players who shouldn't really be in their best 11. I mean, we see England's, the most obvious example for England is their continued obsession with Tom Curran. Nobody really knows why they're picking him. The data suggests he's maybe the worst death bowler who's consistently getting overs in international cricket, but they keep picking him. No one's 100% sure why. Chris Jordan's a pretty marginal call. I mean, there's arguments to say that he shouldn't be in the side. And then from a batting perspective, is Ben Stokes in England's best 11? Is Owen Morgan in England's best 11? Is David Malan in England's best 11? There's the big questions there. Particularly when they're leaving players like Moeen Ali on the bench, who Moeen Ali, virtually transformed the CSK side this year compared with last year. Of course, Moeen Ali and Sam Curran were the MVPs for CSK, and Sam Curran, it will be a great series for Sam Curran in Test matches also. In the Test series. And then India, they've got similar problems. I mean, if they come out. If they come out, Jack, one more question about England. I just wanted to ask: do you think they will be playing 3 spinners as Moeen Ali, Adil Rashid, and Parkinson in the T20 World Cup? No, I don't think that. I think England are quite nervous about Parkinson. I'm not really sure why. Again, if you look at the data, it suggests he's really good. And there's a guy who comes on our show quite often, Dan Weston. And so England, just to talk about Parkinson, explain the Parkinson situation for people who don't know. Matt Parkinson is a leg spin bowler for England. Has got good numbers in domestic cricket.
Yeah, he did well the Pakistan series. Yeah.
When he's played international cricket, apparently there are worries that he bowls too slowly. His average miles per hour is under 50. The only other bowler who's consistently bowled that slowly is actually Shane Warne. So I'm not sure people should be too worried about it. But apparently England are. England think that maybe Matt Parkinson bowls a bit too slowly for international cricket. The data suggests that probably isn't true. So Dan Weston, who comes on our podcast, is an analyst for Birmingham Phoenix and Leicestershire in English cricket, and does some freelance stuff around the world. He has a model basically, and the way that model works is that it looks at when a bowler has bowled to international quality batters in domestic cricket and what the numbers are there. And Matt Parkinson is very good when he's bowling to very good batters. So even though we haven't got a load of evidence of him in international cricket, in county cricket, he has bowled at international level batters and he's got them out. So I don't think there's really anything to worry about there. If I were picking the team, Matt Parkinson would be somewhere in the mix. I'd probably want to see the pitches before I definitely put him in the side, but he'd be somewhere in the mix. He's bowled a couple of them. I don't know if you've been watching the 100, but he's bowled some really good deliveries in that. Like proper leg spinners that bounce outside leg stump and hit off stump, that sort of thing. Like really confused batters. We're definitely going to see Adil Rashid. Owen Morgan loves him, and to be fair, he is a pretty good spin bowler. Exactly. We should see Moeen Ali for team balance. I think you want somebody who can. You want bowl. I think you want two spin options in India, and you want somebody you want bowlers who can spin the ball in different directions for matchup purposes. So you should see Moeen Ali. However, I don't think England necessarily look at the game like that. I think they think there's an advantage to be had in picking an extra seam bowler, probably Mark Wood, and doing things a little bit differently. If you look at the way, and there is a thought process behind this. If you look at the way that most international T20 teams structure up, you've got 2 or 3 batters who are good against pace at the top of the order, and then your 3, 4, and 5, or maybe your 4 and 5, or maybe your 4, 5, and 6 will be guys who are good against spin. 150 strike rates against spin, maybe not so good against pace. Now, England's thinking is if you're facing that team, instead of having Moeen Ali bowl at them, why not have Mark Wood bowl at 4, 5, and 6? Because they're guys who are very good against spin. And instead of facing spin, they're facing the exact opposite. They're facing a guy who bowls 95 miles an hour on a good day, back of a length, and it's quite scary. And there's maybe something to be said for that. I think the matchup wise, that sort of does make sense. I do think though that the conditions will probably prevail here, and I think the historic situation or the history of T20 suggests that spinners actually for the middle overs are better control bowlers, and they keep the economy rate down. So I'd probably go that way. Fundamentally, if you want to look in this at this question, going really deeply on the data, in the middle overs, the whole way through the game, a whole way through a T20 match, basically what you want to do is win the boundary battle. You want to hit more boundaries than the opposite side. Who are the best bowlers at preventing boundaries? Spinners. Historically, it's much harder to hit spinners for 4s and for 6s. I don't know. I think
Jack, let me tell you the top 9 players in the T20 rankings. I guess 9 out of 10 are spinners in the top T20 bowler rankings.
Well, I think there are some issues with the T20 rankings because David Milan's the best batter in the world, but that is illustrative of the point I'm making here. Is that the bowlers who can bowl in the middle overs, and even if they're not taking wickets, so you see Akshar Patel do this for Delhi in the IPL. Yeah. He'll go at 7 and over. His average is about 40. He's not going to take any wickets, but 28 off your 4 overs in a T20 is a massive win. It's a massive win for the bowlers. It puts pressure on everyone else back in the back half of the innings to score runs, and it gives your death bowlers opportunities to pick up wickets. I don't know, to be honest, whether Mark Wood, the profile of a Mark Wood spell of 4 overs is he's going to go for more than 28 more often than not. I think he might take you more wickets, but I think wickets are slightly overrated in T20 cricket. So I think England have probably got that one wrong. I'd like to see him go all out on the spin in some of those matches. It's obviously venue specific, but on some of those bigger pitches in Dubai and the UAE, you're going to be better off with 3 spinners, and if they're leg spinners, not only do you have the potential to suppress the run rate, but leg spinners take wickets. Every year in the IPL, like there's 5 leg spinners in the top 10 wicket takers, 5 plus, and so if you are worried about wickets, Parkinson's a good option from that point of view too.
Exactly. Okay, Jack, thank you so much for coming. It was lovely to have you in the show, and it was lovely learning from you. And today we have discussed a lot of things in just few minutes, and Jack has explained it beautifully in detail. So also I request you to go and listen to the cricket podcast. I'll be sharing the link. We'll be hoping for the whole team of cricket podcasts to be in our show one day, maybe in between the India-England series, or maybe after that, maybe during the World T20, because it was lovely chatting with Jack. So Jack, last words from your side, and any plans of coming to India?
Well, do you know what? Like Ross, who's on the show, he had tickets booked. He was going to go to 3 IPL games in 2020, and then COVID happened. So there's definitely plans on the horizon for a trip to India to catch some IPL matches, I think. When that'll be, who knows? It's probably be 2023 now, I think, unfortunately. But yeah, I would love to do that. As you said, you should definitely listen to the Cricket Podcast. We're over on YouTube. If you just search the Cricket Podcast, or on Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod, or Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want to go. We're doing our preview with Dan Norcross, who's some listeners might know, he's a big BBC commentator. And then we'll have different guests on. We'll be doing lots of daily shows through the India v England series, and then on into the IPL, and then into the World Cup, and then theoretically into the Ashes. So it's a busy year for cricket. We're really looking forward to it. It's sort of, we had the big series earlier in the year in India. Then we've had a little bit of break from England's point of view. I know there was the World Test Championship, but now the cricket season almost starts again on Wednesday at Trent Bridge, and I think I'm really looking forward to that. And it would be great if anyone listening to this wants to come and join us, and hear our thoughts on the game.
Sure, Jack. I request everyone to go and listen to it. Okay, guys. Let me tell you, we did a special episode this morning regarding the KPL. And also yesterday we invited James Butler, one of the famous commentators and podcasters. Also we invited Daryl Cricket from England. So a lot of things coming up for you also. So go and watch the previous ones, and do like, share and subscribe the channel. Hope Jack enjoyed the show. Till then, goodbye, take care, stay safe and enjoy.